The day I first saw the hidden staircase, I'd only been a student at Wingate Academy for a week. I arrived in mid-autumn gray, clouds snagged on slate roofs, chestnut leaves drifting across the courtyards. Still shy enough to keep my linden map of the campus clutched like a shield, my roommate, Dominic Vale, a third-generation Wingate boy with a smile as quick as flint sparks, insisted I follow him to the library that Saturday evening. "Go at dusk," he said, "and you'll have the whole place to yourself. Miss Nettleford dislikes switching on the electric lights before dark. She claims filament glare upsets the older volumes." I thought he meant centuries-old books, but he meant something else entirely. Wingate's library, crouched between the physics observatory and the art studio, an unadorned Georgian block of weather-blackened brick. Inside, everything smelled of dust and camphor, and the salt tang the wind ferried from the estuary beyond the marsh. Carved wooden stacks formed narrow corridors. The ceiling, cross-hatched with beams, felt lower than it should have been, as though the building were bowing an apology for holding too many secrets. We prowled the maze, searching for a rumored collection of censored journals. Instead, Dominic discovered a crack in a shelf that ran floor to ceiling. At first it looked like a drawing fissure in oak, no wider than a thumbnail, but as he pressed his palm against it, a section of shelving swung inward on silent hinges, revealing a triangular void, barely large enough for a child to squeeze through. Inside waited a single stone step. The torch, at we dared not use phone lights were everywhere forbidden, stayed unlit. Yet faint blue radiance leaped up from below, not steady like a bulb, but pulsing, as though something in the depths breathed in wavelengths. "We should tell Nettleford," I whispered. "We should not," Dominic replied, already bracing his foot on the step. "A Wingate secret is worth 100 lessons." He descended, then stopped, brow furrowed. Only one step? Indeed, the flight ended abruptly. The stone lip plunged into packed soil, as if masons had abandoned their work after laying the first slab. Nothing but earth lay beneath that ragged edge. Dominic crouched, tapping the dirt. "Recently filled." He stood and wiped his dusty hands on his trousers. Perhaps they sealed a wine cellar or a catacomb. I glanced behind us. The shelf door remained open, no latch to keep it from swinging shut. I felt cold in my marrow, as though I were trespassing in an unfinished dream. Yet fascination trumped fear. I slid my fingers over the carved balusters, stone serpents entwined, jaws locked in mutual consumption, before easing back into the lamplit corridor of reference volumes. The next morning, Dominic swore us both to silence. We visited again 2 weeks later. Nothing had changed. One step, nothing more. Then winter term ended. We left for the holidays. Pine smoke, mince pies, tiny tragedies of family gatherings, and returned to the North Wing in late January beneath a sky like splintered pewter. On my first free afternoon, I hurried to the library with Dominic at my heels, hearts rabbiting, certain the shelf and stair would have vanished. They hadn't vanished. They'd grown. 2 steps now, the original and a new one below it, identical, carved with the same coiled serpents along the outer edge. And the earth had receded, forming a square cavity where dim bluish light once again shimmered. Dominic dropped to his knees. "They're building it from beneath," he muttered, then grinned at me with the radiance of a born conspirator. "One step at a time." "But why one?" I asked. "Because terms come in ones," he said simply. "One per semester, don't you see? The place is alive to the academic calendar." The notion was ludicrous, but Wingate was awash in traditions that bordered on sorcery. We debated telling a master and decided against it. Instead, we measured. Dominic borrowed string from the art studio. I tied a metal ruler to its end and lowered it into the hole. 11 feet of descent. Before the ruler scraped packed clay, we sketched the measurement in a ledger. And so our vigil began. 3 years passed. We grew accustomed to Wingate's peculiar rhythms. The way the marsh mist flooded playing fields at dawn, the sudden freezing of ornamental ponds that fractured mid-skate like plate glass, the Latin grace chanted before suppers of overcooked haddock. Above all, we grew accustomed to the staircase. Every September and every January, Dominic and I met in the library during the first dusk of term. On cue, a new step awaited us. By the start of our upper 5th year, 15 lay in place. The shaft below resembled a throat of blue haze. The balustrade, always serpents, always devouring themselves, continued unbroken. Others found out. Curiosity is a contagion. A handful of friends we trusted with its locations swore the same oaths of secrecy. Word spread anyway. I remember a Tuesday detonation of shouts when a 4th form girl toppled from the 12th step and cracked her elbow. The infirmary attendant chalked it up to horseplay, but rules were posted. The castellated shelf remained unlocked. No adult seemed aware of its existence. Yet whispers circled that expulsion would greet anyone caught inside. Through it all, Dominic kept meticulous records. Depth, humidity, notes on the light that seemed brighter, more aquamarine, the further the stair sank. He labeled things like a field biologist, while I drew illustrations of the serpents, their scales, their angular heads wearing what looked eerily like scholars' caps. Once during revision week, I asked a question I'd long avoided. Where do you think it ends? Dominic stared into nothing for a long moment, then answered, where all knowledge ends. Underwater. We laughed, though the words struck a tuning fork of unease. It was Mr. Quill, our new classics master, who gave me the next clue. He was a gaunt man with nicotine fingers, and an accent traveling between Oxford and oblivion. One wet April morning he spoke of Atlantean myths, of islands swallowed by pride and tide, of civilizations that fled downward instead of outward. His lecture meandered until it landed on a phrase in passing, Serpentes doctissime, the most learned serpents, said to inhabit libraries of coral beneath the drowned continent of Eridanus. How did they breathe? Someone asked. Mr. Quill polished his spectacles. By devoting themselves to thought, pure contemplation, unpolluted by air. He tapped his temple as though oxygen were a superstition. I met Dominic in the cloisters after class, pulse banging. We exchanged no words. We didn't need to. That night we returned to the stair and descended until the new bottom step rocked under our weight. I peered into the gulf. Blue light shimmered like aquarium glow. Somewhere far below there was motion, a slithering ripple there, and gone. We clutched each other like shipwrecked companions. If we wait 3 more years, Dominic breathed, we'll be 17. There will be enough steps to reach whatever waits beneath. What then? We shall matriculate twice. It sounded like prophecy. 4. The step that appeared at the beginning of lower 6th bore an inscription in archaic Greek. Dominic translated, "Keep faith with the coil of knowledge." We began training ourselves. Cardio in the boathouse, freediving in the tidal pool beyond the breakwater. We told everyone it was for rowing trials. In truth, we wanted lungs that could weather deep places. The secret of the stair eclipsed everything. My grades tottered, my correspondence with family dwindled to postcards. Dominic, usually a blazing academic, started missing deadlines. One rainy evening in February, we were summoned to Headmaster Griswold's study. I expected punishment for truancy. Instead, he studied us through wire-rimmed spectacles. "You boys look half-haunted," he said. "Wingate can do that. Its ghosts nibble at the brightest minds." His gaze drifted to the window where the estuary glimmered pewter. "Beware the appetite for hidden things. Not every secret is nourishment." I wanted to ask if he knew, but Dominic thanked him and tugged me out before more was said. Early July, the end of lower 6th. 1 step left before summer holidays. The chimney swifts wheeled above the quadrangle. We stood on the latest edition 23 steps below the library floor. watching motes of blue light swirl like plankton in a nocturnal sea. Something spoke. The voice arrived as a shimmer in the eardrum, words forming after they'd already landed. "Descend in earnest," it said. "Bring your questions polished and your certainties mulched." Dominic squeezed my shoulder hard enough to bruise. "Did you?" "Yes." We fled upward, stifling twin screams. Upstairs, ordinary lamplight felt garish. Neither of us slept. Next morning I packed for home but never boarded my train. Instead, I wandered the marsh path until dusk, then turned back, soaked and shaking. Dominic waited in our door, eyes wild. "We can't leave," he whispered. "Not now." So we stayed. We told the administration our parents were abroad. We volunteered to help the maintenance crew catalog summer repairs. Nobody questioned extra labor. We spent daylight painting dormers and oiling cricket bats, but every night we visited the stair, measuring. No new step appeared. The next was scheduled for September. Still, the blue glow brightened until our faces wore its tint after we left. We debated descending anyway. The drop from the final step into the unknown measured 30 feet now. Even in pitch black, we might manage with rope. But the balustrades seemed to hiss when we proposed shortcuts. Wingate taught patience. We obeyed. VI term began. New first years squeaked with excitement, clueless of the abyss below their borrowed beds. On the equinox, the 24th step materialized. A gale screamed across the fens, rattling leaded panes. Dominic and I met at dusk, each carrying a pack. Food rations, notebooks sealed in waxed wrap, torches, a coil of climbing rope, a fleam for drawing blood if required. Dominic's idea gleaned from folk tales where offerings smoothed passage. We left a letter on our study desk. "To whom it may concern, we seek scholarship beyond this shore. Do not search, you will only hasten the tide." Then we descended. 7. The stair narrowed as it sank. Moisture filmed the walls. Salt crystals glittered. Our torches revealed murals. Serpents teaching human children geometry. Serpents carving canals through jungles. Serpents raising star charts to the night sky. We counted 50 steps, but the number made no sense. Each term granted one, yet invisible landings compounded geometry into impossible measure. After an hour downward, the sound of water found us. Not the splash of surf, but the colossal hush of an endless river, sliding beyond a stone quay. The air grew cool as cellar draughts. My wristwatch stopped. We reached a portal framed by marble fangs. Beyond it sprawled a cavern whose roof arched out of sight, stalactites dripping brine. And there, on islands of basalt connected by rope bridges, coiled the scholars. They were serpents the length of libraries, scales opalescent, heads crowned with silver circlets. Forelimbs, vestigial yet deft, held styluses shaped from mother of pearl. They wrote upon panes of glass that floated before them, each stroke glowing white before sinking into transparency. The collective scratching produced the sub-audible hum we'd mistaken for water. When they noticed us, silence devoured the cavern. Eyes like twin gemstones turned, one serpent slender as a sloop's mast uncoiled and glided forward, belly fins whispering across stone. Its voice rode directly into our spines. "Welcome, pregraduates. Present your theses." Dominic stepped forward, trembling. I wish to know why knowledge must be hidden." A ripple of amusement coursed through the assembly. The lead serpent tasted the air with a forked tongue. "Concealment is the midwife of wonder. Without wonder, learning is stillborn." He turned to me. "And you?" I swallowed. "I wish to know why the staircase chose us." It regarded me for a long, cold moment. "The staircase chooses none. It descends. Those who match its tempo arrive." Questions led to dialogue. We spoke of physics, of the grief of families left behind, of whether progress required submergence. Each serpent answered with parables instead of facts. Night and day did not seem to pass, or perhaps they passed in eddies we could not sense. We ate fruit the serpents conjured from circular wells. nectar-filled orbs that tasted like all summers at once. Finally, Dominic blurted the request that had sharpened inside him for years. "Teach us!" the serpents conferred through Reiki-like pulses. Then the leader replied, "Teaching is burden. Earning is metamorphosis. Choose the form you will bear." Scales crept across Dominic's arms before I understood his choice. His pupils slit, his back arched, shirt tearing as a ridge of bone pressed outward. He didn't cry out. He exhaled like a man opening gills. Terror pinned me. I remembered Griswold's warning. Not every secret is nourishment. The serpents watched, impassive. Dominic's transformation slowed when it reached his sternum, as if awaiting consent from some deeper self. He looked at me, eyes luminous, unfamiliar, and spoke in a voice braided with sibilance. "Come with me." I tried to picture the years above, my mother's letters unanswered, the green lawns of June, the smell of textbooks warmed by sun. I tried to imagine returning, explaining that the friend I loved had become legend. My fear, my longing, they tilted the scale. I stepped backward. "I can't." Something like sorrow rippled through his changing features. He inclined his head. "Then remember." The lead serpent boomed. "Ascenders may take one gift. I asked for a memory, a perfect recollection of all I'd seen. Perhaps proof would follow. Granted." The word echoed like chisel strikes. Ate I. Climbed until my legs quaked. The steps felt steeper, the balustrade colder. When I burst through the hidden shelf into the library, dawn was fingering the panes. Dust motes swirled in normal daylight. I staggered to Griswold's study. The headmaster listened without interrupting. Finally, he said, "You did what Wingate demands. You learned what tuition alone cannot purchase. Dominic, he's still there. He has chosen scholarship of another stripe." Griswold's eyes glimmered. "Some graduates write books. Some found empires. A few become the footnotes beneath history. Vale has gone to join the index." He opened a drawer and produced a battered volume, the Chronicle of Subaqueous Academia. He flipped to an illustration uncannily like the cavern I had left. "You are not the first witness," he said, "but few recall so clearly. The staircase takes memory as toll, unless one asks otherwise." I looked at the image, then at my hands, expecting scales. None. Only tremor. Griswold slid the book to me. "Add what you saw. Then decide your future. Remain at Wingate as caretaker of the stair or leave and forget." "Forget?" "You would remember nothing except that Dominic died in an accident. The mind heals that way." I thought of my friend, half-serpent, beckoning. I thought of wonder and of burden. I chose to stay. I teach literature now, wandering the stacks in chalk-dusted cuffs. Each semester I escort one promising pupil to the shelf. Tap twice. Watch curiosity widen their eyes. I do not force them downward. The rule, unwritten, is simple. Interest must exceed fear. Some descend, most retreat. The staircase keeps schedules. 1 step in September, 1 in January. 42 steps at present. The blue glow brightens. Sometimes I sense Dominic's presence the way sailors sense weather. Now, I believe he's writing treatises on currents of thought, coiling them into glass panes for future seekers. When students ask why certain texts have missing pages, I smile and say, "Concealment is the midwife of wonder." They rarely understand until the shelf swings wide. I meanwhile polish my certainty into mulch, semester by semester preparing for the day I too will match the tempo again. The serpents no longer frighten me. What frightens me is the possibility of remaining unchanged, of mistaking graduation for completion. Knowledge is a coil. One can tighten it or shed it like skin. This evening, I stand at the reading desk, fountain pen poised above a chronicle of subaqueous academia. I add a final line beneath the latest entry. Step 42 laid, light intensifying. I hear Dominic's voice in the flux. "Come further, I am almost ready." The ink dries. Beyond the window, the estuary gleams with tide-melted sky. The staircase waits, patient as gravity, counting semesters like heartbeats, forever descending toward the scholars who never surface, who never cease to ask, who write in silence so profound it shapes the world above.